Hi, and welcome back to the Forgive Yourself podcast. I'm Brenda Reiss, your host, and today's episode is one that touches on love, loss, and the kind of transformation that reshapes a life. My guest is Kathryn Henry, and I'm really excited that she's here today. She's a writer, a speaker, and a business leader whose life has been profoundly shaped by both corporate success and personal heartbreak. After leading global teams at Lululemon, Gap, and Levi Strauss, she stepped away from the corporate world to honor a promise to her late wife to live fully, love deeply, and tell the truth of her experience. Her debut memoir, A Dime to Say I Love You, which is fabulous, by the way, is a raw and honest account of love, grief, and spiritual awakening. And I know her story will resonate with anyone who has ever loved deeply, lost deeply, and awakened through it. Today, Kathryn and I are going to talk about how grief can become a doorway to healing, how forgiveness plays a vital role in living fully, and the surprising ways that love continues to show up, sometimes in the form of a simple dime. Kathryn, I'm so honored to have you here with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The book is just touching me deeply. And the way that you write it, we were talking a little bit before I hit record, is done to where it's so digestible and but powerful. I mean, I can see myself in your story. And that's a beautiful gift that you have in providing this book for those of us that are and have and will experience grief. Yeah. So your story, and plus it touched me. It's rooted in incredible love between you and Lisa, and just in the deep loss of her passing. And you talk about how her illness and not only the grief, but her loss, but also your deep spiritual self already, how that has really awakened more fully. So maybe we can start there. And how did walking through that illness and loss shape not only your grief, but also awaken you more in your spiritual walk?
I don't think that there was any other option with death. Death of the person I held most close in my life at that time, in sense, and realizing, I guess, getting a broader view as to what is death and what is love. Those questions that we just had right in front of us. And the only way we could walk that path together was through a gift that we got in actually asking and answering and exploring those questions, which touched me just so much more deeply. And when she transitioned, the profound nature of that and what ensued beyond that opened my aperture of life so much more that it just changed me forever and just made me realize that as much as, this life is so beautiful, it's a wonderful thing, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm gone or that she's gone. There's still this fabric that continues to exist. So it was a profound change in how, frankly, just no more fear of death. Because of facing it, because of walking through it, and the learning that came through the experiences we had of facing that together, and falling down and getting back up, and face planting and getting back up, and face planting again and getting back up, and realizing, as you start to conquer kind of those fears that hold us back from living, death being one of them. It just changed me to my core.
Yeah, how can it not? Right? I mean, how can you not question your life? I like how you write about that too. It's like the questions that you had, not just the who am I, but really what is the meaning here? And that you had been asking those. I love that your journey has been since you were younger.
Yes.
in the spiritual. Mine didn't start till I was older. So I really admired that. And that you had a foundation, but you also talk about that you had to keep kind of enforcing that foundation.
Yeah.
And did you find that through this process was kind of like a fortifying your foundation for your
Yeah.
spiritual growth?
I think, life is every life is a spiritual journey, whether it's conscious to someone or not.
True.
It is a level of a journey that we all get to have, and we do get to guide that journey. We may not be actively owning that, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
we do. We guide our journey and our choices we make. And so the experiences we have are a key piece of shaping us on that journey.
Mhm.
And I had some experiences that, could have probably, well, they could have ended my my journey at a few points.
Yeah.
Um, but I was also incredibly blessed to have a curiosity, like finally to get to a place where I realized, well, why do I want to end my life? Why is that even a consideration? And I started having experiences that just broadened the aperture on life, like looking what I found, and this was in Kansas early on, when I looked at others that were in a similar circumstance to me, and their choices and options ahead of them weren't nearly as wonderful as mine were. And
Yeah.
instead of being in a place where I was angry about what my conditions were in life, it opened me up to see, wow, maybe I should appreciate, like we can look at a very narrow focus on our lives and
Mm.
easily find things that aren't going to make us happy. We can
Right.
easily find things that anger us, that frustrate us, that hurt us, whatever. But the more we open our perspective and broaden how what we see in the world and how we see the world, the more we can welcome in different ways of being. And that's what my life became. This I was always just curious, looking for, in work, in life, in relationships, what's gonna help me to see things more broadly. And that for me became a deeply spiritually rooted
Yeah.
experience.
Well, and I love that you looked at that, like the changing the perspective, right? Of and perception of your story, of your life, of looking at that. And that takes some pretty, I don't know if you would take it like some pretty profound understanding about yourself, or at least maybe not even understanding, but curiosity.
Yeah,
I mean, I
curiosity.
heard curiosity was big, is what I gathered with you.
Yeah, and curiosity was like I did a lot of reading over the years and studying of just
Mhm.
different. I became very curious about Buddhism. I was curious about Zen. I was curious about Hinduism
Yeah.
and getting into just learning more about things that have gone on in the world, things that are currently going on in the world, ways of thinking, philosophy, that just they just touched me in ways that made me really think, like made
Mm.
me question, like does that make sense to me? Does that not make sense to me? Where does that,
Yeah.
how do I connect with that or not? The book too is something, some people will pick it up and it may challenge their way of thinking, and they may find that no, that doesn't align with my way of thinking, and that's okay too. It doesn't have to. But if it makes you think, if it makes you question things, if it makes you look within, I think this is our biggest opportunity, or a very significant opportunity that impacted me, was instead of looking outside for someone to tell
Mhm.
me the answers or
Thank you.
who I should be or any of that, looking at things that I could then use my critical thinking skills
Mm.
and question, how does that land with me? Do I agree with that? Do I not agree? Where does it touch me? Is it making me uncomfortable? And if so, why? That
Thanks.
is a good thing. Like getting into places where, that's where growth comes from. And we know, especially in the West, we know how to do things to grow our muscles and physically and things along those lines. But how are we working our spiritual muscle, our mental muscle, our emotional muscle? We can build our intelligence by amazing education. We can build our body by going into the gym. but I don't believe we have the maturity of practices around spiritual and emotional intelligence and building those capabilities. And that is, I think that's something I hope this book will drive for people, because it does pushes on those areas. It pushes on the spirituality piece, and it
Yeah.
pushes on the emotions, because there's some really raw stuff in there of real things that happen.
Mhm.
And guess what? Somehow, we get through them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how, too, because you challenge through the book in a loving way, a challenge of, hey, here's this piece of it. This is what you went through, or what you and Lisa went through. And then here's the introspective part. Now your turn, and I loved that. I loved just the thought process of organized religion, and then, looking at Eastern philosophies, and just the way that you helped me think even deeper. And you also helped, in your story and in your life. I think one of the biggest things I admire about you is you don't sugarcoat pain. You don't sugarcoat the pain. You name it for what it is. And still, like we talked about, there's meaning in it. And that's what you look for. And one of the things we talked a little bit about that we share is the AFGO, right? Piece of it. I wanted to bring that forward because I think it's valuable to the people listening, because, the one thing that I have learned is, okay, yes, there's always growth opportunities, and bringing in the AFGO, another fucking growth opportunity,
Mhm.
just it makes me laugh, actually. You know what I mean? It brings a little lightness to it. Can you share, because you talk about it in the book, and I know that you live this. So can you share what that means to you, and how it's helped you reframe even your, like, the hard experiences? Because your story is amazing.
Thank you. I think all of us have an amazing story. Every
Yes,
story matters. Every one of us matters, and doesn't matter, right? At the same time.
I love
But the AFGO, so Lisa was one of the wittiest, amazingly funny, yet could also be very dry and serious. And there were times where it just was heavy.
it. Mm.
Things were heavy, some of the things we were facing, and we needed to laugh. So, hey, something crazy happens, we just look at each other and shake our heads. Hey, another fucking growth opportunity. Wow, lucky us. And we had our moments of tears, we had our moments of laughter, we had all of the above. Um, but laughter was an important
Mm.
healing element for us. And healthy laughter, like not the kind of laughter where you're making fun of people, or you know, that kind of thing. I was raised with a good amount of that kind of sarcasm that bordered
Oh,
on meanness, at times. And I mean, I was raised with that, and had to relearn what's appropriate laughter and what's not.
yeah.
But AFGO was a healing tool for us. It really was. And it was a coping mechanism. It helped us to recontextualize something, and to shift ourselves from a perspective of victim to a perspective of owning what was happening, or accepting and leaning into it. Because when you use that, you say, okay, AFGO, how do I look at this situation? And instead of saying, why me? Why is this happening to me? How could it? I can't deserve this, whatever. And sometimes you need to feel those things, and accept that you do feel them, and you still need
Mhm.
to process it. But to shift yourself into a place of, okay, how am I going to turn this into a growth opportunity? What am I going to get from this? How am I going to get through this? Because I know I can. It's just another growth opportunity. I know I can get to the other side of this.
Mm. I love how you say that. Was that hard, like, to be able to get to that point? Or do you think the curiosity helped you with getting to AFGO, right? It's like, if somebody's struggling with, why is this happening to me? Right. And getting them to go, wait a minute, how can we view it? How can we turn it, reframe it, and view it as another growth opportunity? Is there anything you would share about that in your journey?
It's, I would definitely share that it's not easy. And at times it's hard. I mean, it can depend on just how extreme the circumstances are. I think of someone like a Viktor Frankl, who was
Yeah.
influential to me, and the strength that and what that individual endured, and many, many others in concentration camps, is just, I can't even fathom that.
Mm-mm.
Um, Yet I have a faith that, whatever I have to face, I will face. So, it's I would say it's both hard and then it gets easier. And the
Mm.
key to my experience was shifting away from giving my power away. So it's whenever I hear, I don't even have these thoughts anymore. If I do, they never get to verbal.
Good.
And that's how, meditation has been helpful, is really knowing what your thoughts are. And, our thoughts create, they just start there, but ultimately they become that which creates, our
Yeah.
lives. Um, saying things like, to have something come out like, so and so makes me feel that way, or you made me do this, or those are very important words
Mm.
that are giving away our power. You're giving somebody else control over your
Mm.
feelings, or you're claiming someone else has control over your feelings or your actions. So it's not easy, but it does when we get to a place where we start to recognize, oh, wait a minute, does someone really have, like, how can someone make me feel this way? Do they really have the capacity for that, or the capability? No, they don't. That is my choice. I
Yeah.
mean, they may be doing things to me. There could be a scenario where you're being abused or things along those lines, but still to find that place where we have the power of choice.
Mm.
So I think it depends on what the extremity of the situation is, as to whether it's hard or really hard, and how much something like an AFGO can help.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I like how you mentioned there are things that help us get there, right? Like you mentioned meditation, and I know that's been a huge part of your journey. And journaling, I love the punching bag. I love I love I mean all of that. Learning our emotions and learning healthy ways to be able to express them and to get them out of our bodies. And I think that's all a part of this process. From what you're sharing, it's like it's not easy, but it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
worth it to get to this, to be able to shift our perception around this story or this situation. It's like, maybe I can look at it differently. Maybe I can be willing to look at it differently. And that's what I'm hearing you say is this
Yeah.
journey of that.
We carry our emotions in our body. We carry
Mm.
them, and they can damage us. I mean, they can create disease in our body. So processing that and being aware of it, we can take baby steps and just start by acknowledging these feelings we have, or the thoughts we have, or the things that have hurt us. um, and the more that we can get into healthy practices to process, our emotions, and to raise our awareness, and meditation to me has been one to just raise awareness.
Mm.
When I forget anybody else, but for me, my experience, when I get quiet and I can get present in my body, or I can get present in what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, aware of certain things. That is when I can then get into more of a position of, providence, or ownership, if you will, of
Yeah.
what I want to do with that.
Now in the book, I think it's you talk about a practice. Is it contemplation?
Hmm.
Yeah. And that really intrigued me because I had not heard of someone using that as like a practice. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a meditative practice. So, a meditative practice on contemplation would be to pick a topic, or a concept, or an idea, and you sit with it. You sit with it and contemplate. where does that land? What does that mean? I mean, it could be like in Zen meditation, they would use koans, and it would be something very difficult to understand, but it's to develop our skills of actually rational processing or rational thinking.
Oh,
And contemplation on, there's concentration meditation, which is also helpful, which that is in order to take our energy and focus it. Like oftentimes it'll be on our breathing or
yeah.
on our third eye,
Yeah.
focusing, just complete concentration. Or you might even do a concentration meditation on a flower or on a flame or something along those lines. And it's amazing when you put your energy and concentrate it on something for 10 minutes or longer, how you can just come to a different sense of presence. So those are just
Mhm.
different types of meditative practices that can be employed. And concentration is around, for me, is around some of these things where I would question. I might read something in, like, maybe it's the Stoicism or some
Yes.
philosophy of some sort, and something that might spark within me, and I'm like, how do I feel? What do I think of that? What do I think of that? So getting quiet
Mm.
and concentrating on something like that to say, or contemplating, both concentrating and contemplating,
Contemplating, yeah.
to really like gauge where am I on that? What do I think of that? How does that land for me? Does that make sense? Is that a yes? Is that a no?
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because that really resonated with me when you
Yeah.
share about it, and several times in the book. And it was like, all right, I'm going to focus on that one and see. I love the contemplation piece. So yeah, it was fascinating. So I'm adding that. So just so thank you for that. I appreciate that. In your book, you also, which is what my podcast is about, is forgiveness. And that how forgiveness is all that we're talking about, how who we are as a person, right, is really, I use the umbrella of forgiveness to really go, who am I? And how can I quit going so much external, come internal? Because I'm really the only one. I mean, all forgiveness is self-forgiveness.
Mhm.
And that in your process, you talk, especially in your past, you really talked about what I'm going to say is transformation through forgiveness, as you were able to transform, and it's played a big role for you. So how did forgiveness of yourself, of others, show up for you in your life? And even, like, I think there's forgiveness even in grief. How has it shaped you personally and professionally?
Well, I'd say the biggest, probably most challenging step in forgiveness was of self.
Oh, yeah.
That's uh but I'd say probably one of the biggest ways it's been transformative is what I found is that where I was holding on to something that required forgiveness was because there was an emotion of some sort attached.
Mhm.
So whether it was a judgment or an anger, or someone had wronged me, or something I had done that I just couldn't believe I was stupid enough to have ever done.
Yeah.
Um, at its core was something that was holding me back
Mm.
from being at peace. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really something holding me back from being in a place of peace and contentment.
Mm.
And most of the things that I would say required forgiveness were at the core, it was a judgment. It was a judgment of self, it
Mm.
was a judgment of someone else. And oftentimes, to your point, very much rooted in all my own stuff. How
Yeah.
could someone treat me this way? How could someone think this, or whatever? So forgiveness and letting go of those emotions, of those feelings, of the anger, was freedom. When it really is freeing yourself from these things that clog you up, that just don't produce anything positive. And it doesn't mean condonement of any behavior. either my own or anyone else's. It's not saying that something is okay, but it's that I'm not going to allow this to perpetually harm me by holding on to it. And that's the freedom through forgiveness, is by letting go of these things that will otherwise create dis-ease in the body,
Yeah.
or in the mind or in the spirit, and freeing yourself from the binds that need not hold us and tie us
Mm.
up.
Yeah. Did you find that there was grief in your forgiveness walk?
Oh, sometimes, yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes we want to hold on to those things. Like, I want to be angry at this, or and we find it in judgment of others. I mean, it's going on so much in our world right now. There's so much divisiveness. And, I know a lot of people that have different ways of seeing the world than I do. And, sometimes it's more challenging to have conversations when, depending on how far our views of the world are.
Mhm.
But those don't need to create, they don't need to create division from emotion and anger. Like, why should someone else's views hurt me? you know,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I may not agree and I may not understand, but
Mm.
that doesn't mean I need to allow that to upset my contentment and within. It may
Yeah.
drive my actions and choices,
Yes.
that's fair,
Yeah.
but yeah, it doesn't have to change who I am or my content within.
Did you learn about forgiveness early on, or was that later through any processes, or has it been kind of gradual all
It's a
along?
journey. It's
Yeah.
all, I find that all of it, every single aspect of love, forgiveness, it's all a journey. And when I think I've grown and developed a depth of capability, and then I realized just how shallow my capability is, because later it gets deeper, or it's just, I find all of these experiences just to deepen and grow over time as we expand, assuming we choose to proactively work on things and explore and expand and try to grow.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some moments for sure where there was therapy where we had to deal with forgiveness or deal with letting go of anger or things along those
Yeah.
lines. And certainly proactive processes, be they around meditation or journaling or hitting the bag, which I still have hanging at my house here.
Oh, good. Oh, I love that. And you'll have to read the book to hear about the bag.
It's a
Because
therapy. It's
it's
a
a
therapy
therapy. It is a therapy. And I loved how you wrote about that. I really did. And it's helpful. It's therapeutic.
for sure. For sure.
Therapeutic, especially when you're dealing with the emotions like you were going through. It's like when they're so chaotic and they feel like there's no landing place. And that's one way. And that's what I help with the clients is like, how do we do anger in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Frustration, sadness, love. How do we express this and feel it in a healthy way? And so I was really
What have you
fascinated.
found? Do you have go-tos for you?
Yes, yes. Well, so my favorite has always been the tennis racket to the bed. So I laugh and I say, I lost my punching bag in the divorce because he kept it. It was in the garage and I loved it. I'm one for kicking, right? I just love kicking, and then the occasional punch. Being I was a former athlete myself. So, I get that.
You're
It's like,
never a former athlete. You'll
okay,
always be.
thank you. Thank you for saying that.
It's
But it's
still
like,
in you. That
it is.
athlete is in there somewhere.
Oh, she is. She is. And I love that. I call it more of an explosive. For me, it's like, because when my anger comes up over things, it's like, I feel it and I know I need to get it out. And so I have found ways, the tennis racket to the bed. And I like using my voice. When
Mhm.
I hit to use a tennis racket, it's like, fuck you. It's like all the stuff, right? And it just helps me. And then not too long. And I'm like, okay, I feel exhausted, but happy and just like, all right, I moved the
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's what has been so helpful. Then I can move to journaling and
Yeah.
meditation. Right. But I've got to move it first for
Yep.
myself. Yeah. And then, of course, working out is also a good one. Walking is super good
Mm.
for me. And that's my other go tos. But when I feel that surge of chaotic emotion, it's like, I want to get her out.
Yep.
Yeah. And I know you wrote about that. So you relate to
Yes.
that. You relate to that. So I want to back up a second. You were talking about presence when we were talking about contemplation and and just the different things that you do. Um, and when in reading your book, I think presence to me really stood out with the dime moments.
Mm.
And I mean that's the name of your book. And I'd like to take a moment and just talk about what do those dime moments mean to you and how does it help you? I know it connects you to Lisa, but you also talk about a few other dime moments in your life. And
Hmm.
I'm sure they continue today. So would you mind sharing about those dime moments?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple that are the most profound that are in the book specifically. And those are experiences where I was just in a place where somewhat, I don't know if lost is the word, but
Mm.
not present. Just in thought, in concern, in, questioning things, just kind of swirling almost. And
Yeah.
then in just not a place that a dime should be, there it is. And in that moment, it's like this activation of why is this here? And it's like it brings you present. How did
Yeah.
this get here? Why is this here? Wait, oh, it's something else. Oh, wait, okay, it's a message. And there are moments that just capture me and bring me back to the present because it's a message that I'm receiving. It's a really clear signal that, okay,
Mhm.
this is something that is out of the ordinary. This should not be happening. This doesn't make sense. This should not be in this place at this moment right now. Um, so, dime moments are moments for me that bring us back to that presence, that
Mhm.
clarity, that connection with the now. Nothing happens in life outside of the present moment. So
Mm.
when we are in our minds or in our bodies elsewhere, having an out of body experience or so far off in the future, worrying or
Yes.
having anxiety about what's going to happen, or well, really a lot more of our worry is about the past, when we're in different places, it it's different when we're doing that proactively in like a visualization exercise, which can be powerful in the present moment. We can choose to use things like visualization to imagine ourselves in a scenario, getting up and speaking in front of people or being in an athletic competition or something along those lines. That can be very powerful, but it's purposeful, it's intentional, and it's in the present moment. But when we're not in the present moment and our minds are carrying us all over, we're just we can't fully experience that which is there.
Mm.
So the present moment, it's the biggest gift we can give is our presence, and it is a present. So
Yeah.
dimes and dime moments, those are experiences that have taught me that, which I'm working on the skills to be able to do that at will. Right.
Yeah.
Once I consciously realize, okay, wait, I'm swirling or I'm somewhere else. How do I bring myself back? And, in some situations, it's easier than others. Kind of back to our conversation earlier. When we're in extreme situations, it may be more challenging to employ our skills of, present moment awareness or things along those lines. But why I have the practices I have is to constantly work on that. Golf is one of my teachers for that because
I bet.
it's, you got everything out there on display. You got, you're battling ego because you don't want to, you want to do well, you want to be the best you could be, or but you're in nature and it's so beautiful. And then, you're with different people every time. And it's just a wonderful practice. You have to perform physically. You have to think strategically. Don't get too caught up with any emotions if you're doing great or if you're not doing great. Um, so, coming back full circle, bringing ourselves to the present moment is the only place we can really operate from.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how that's not just dimes, right? You don't just see the dime, but the dime moments. And I think that's what was powerful because you mentioned several of those throughout the book about, from your past and probably even today. And
Yes.
and I thank you for sharing that. You're learning too. You're still learning also because I think sometimes people can look at others and go, "Oh, I'll never be like that."
Well,
Right?
part of why the stories are in there, it's like, I think we make assumptions about people. Not I think, we do make
We do.
assumptions. You see someone where they're at right now in their life or in a particular moment, and you make an assumption. You make multiple assumptions
Yeah.
about them. And, everyone has their journey. Everyone has been through their ups and downs, some more than others, whatever, some less than others. But we all have our journey. And the more we can be less judgmental and think we know so much about people. And it's why I put out there the story I put out there. I don't think many people, I am still very much in the corporate world. I'm an independent director still.
Okay.
I'm not in the full time operating role by choice. But if someone looked at who I am right now, just on the surface, I'm sure they'd make a lot of assumptions. Probably, I don't know, 1% might be correct of the
Yeah.
assumptions. And
Yeah.
that's probably true with assumptions we make of others. So I put the story out there, um, not because I want my story out in the world. I don't have any strong sense of that desire. Um, but I also recognize that meaningfully connecting with someone
Mhm.
comes by, being real, being vulnerable, being truthful about what our experiences are. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had those experiences.
Yeah.
So those can help for someone, I think, to meaningfully connect and see themselves and be able to realize, wow, I mean, we're all on our journey. And guess what? I'm still stumbling and falling and face planting. That's just, the more we challenge ourselves, and we should be
Yeah.
challenging ourselves enough to fall down sometimes, because if we don't, we're probably not challenging ourselves enough.
Well, yeah, and we grow through the challenges. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's just part of human nature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the good times are great, but it's those challenges that make us face. It's like, ooh, is this where I want to be today? Or no, do I want to be over there? Like,
Yeah.
especially for emotional growth and spiritual growth. I love that. And I'd like to circle back for a second about grief, because I have
Mhm.
a lot of people that reach out about that with the forgiveness work. And for somebody who, because you talked about the way my interpretation is using grief for transformation, right?
Mhm.
Because grief for me in my walk these last few years has broken me open,
Mm.
is what I say. Because I went to places about myself that I could never go without this grief, if that
Yes,
makes sense.
that does.
And for somebody listening right now who is suffering from loss, because we have a lot of that going on, um, what would you want them to know about moving through grief, or what's possible as you move through grief, or anything you can share?
A couple things come up for me. The first is that we don't have the grief if we didn't love so much. So there the reason for it, if you will, is the loss of something we loved so much and so dearly. So one of the things that helped me in my processing is to step back from the grief a moment and say, would I have given up any of the love that I shared?
Mm.
No. Okay, well, this is something that happens or can happen because of that love. So I just have to accept that. Like this is kind of part of the package. If you think of it as a coin, the love and grief are, that
Yeah.
you just flip the coin over and you've got what's on the other side. So that's the first thing. The second thing that came up for me in my experience through grief is that you don't get over it. It's not like it ends. It morphs, it transforms, it changes. Um, and it, in my opinion, in my experience, um, it never goes away.
Mm.
It's a labyrinthine path. It just kind of
What is that?
changes. It's, I'll have things that come up. Maybe I'll hear a song and I'll just have a wonderful memory that comes up. And
Mm.
sometimes it's accompanied with some heartache. It's like, oh,
Mm.
yes, that was so wonderful. But the more I allow myself to broaden the perspective and consciously think about both sides of the coin, not just the grief side,
Thank you.
but the love side, and allow those two to coexist,
Mm.
it has helped me to process the grief. And then the last thing that comes up on the grief, in particular with Lisa, that has been helpful, and this is more to somebody who might be in the process right now of losing someone, or going through something like that, a loss, is we consciously had conversations that were the most difficult conversations I've ever had in my
Mm.
life about this is happening. And we had counseling to get us through that.
Mm.
The result is that when she transitioned, there was nothing left unsaid.
Oh,
So I lived with no regret. And that is not something that everyone gets the opportunity to do. Oftentimes we lose loved ones in a more immediate way.
yeah.
So both acknowledging the gift that I had in that and looking to live life more that way in
Yeah.
case I don't get that gift
Oh,
in my current relationships
yeah.
has become an active way of living. So trying to think about, okay, wait a minute. If this was the last time I was going to see this person,
Mm.
what would the last thing I'd want to say to them be? And that's really hard to do, but it's a wonderful practice. And because I know the gift of how our relationship, when she transitioned and I couldn't sit down and talk to her any longer,
Yeah.
knowing that we did process and discuss everything we needed to, and for the most part, feeling that with my mother when she transitioned as well was
Mm.
so wonderful. Um, I try to have those kind of relationships with people that I love in my life,
Mm.
so that if they were to go tomorrow, I'd have a level of peace that we were good. So,
Oh my God, that's powerful,
and
Kathryn.
that helps with the grief, because sometimes our grief can be so extreme because it's anchored in all the things we wish we would have done, we wish we would have said, we
Mm.
wish we would have fixed before they left. So start fixing it now, because it's going to make it easier later. And in the West, we don't choose to deal with death. We don't choose to talk about it. Part of my love for the Eastern, I've been to India a few times. I love the Bhagavad Gita and just different, different learnings around Vedic sciences. And,
Oh, yeah.
um, there are active practices around death. And it's actually, as much as it may seem counterintuitive, those are practices that allow you to live more fully.
Yeah.
So,
Oh my gosh. Ah, I think I could talk to you for hours.
likewise. Well, we'll have to talk again.
Yes, I would love that. And as we come to a close, I just want to thank you, Kathryn, for sharing your story and your honesty and your depth. And I encourage everyone to get her new memoir, A Dime to Say I Love You, which is available now. And I love that it not only it talks about navigating grief, but it talks about love. Just the love that you shared. was so, I felt it. And, and it offers comfort and it offers connection. And so what we're going to do is put the links to your books and ways to connect with you in the show notes. And what I want to share today with those listening, thank you for being part of this community. And remember that forgiveness of yourself and others is the doorway to living fully and loving deeply. And I hope that you heard at least something today that you can take away. And remember, until next time, be gentle with yourself and know that you matter. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, would you do me a favor and share this episode and then follow us on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss one episode of the Forgive Yourself podcast, where every Friday you will get tips, tools, and stories so that you can turn your pain into peace. Take care.